And I think that, what you were saying about Lee having those 9 starts in 2004 and Huff having 20, I think that rare is that pitcher that steps into Major League Baseball and immediately has success. I mean, like you said, CC came up in '01, and I think it was 2005, it was like in May or something, all of a sudden something clicked for him. Well, that's 4 full seasons of a guy who, is probably the best pitcher in baseball right now, where that development process needs to take place. And so I think that that's what the Indians really have to use 2010 and maybe even part of 2011 for, to really get those kinks out of those guys and figure out, who's Jason Davis of this lot and who's, CC Sabathia. Not that a CC's out there, but, you have to kind of figure out what you've got. And the only way to do that is to throw these guys out there and see what they have.
Yeah, I mean, are we going to find out, is David Huff Billy Traber, or is he going to be a Cliff Lee kind of guy? I mean, not that extreme, but you know what I'm saying. It's going to be interesting how they do that. And I think the lineup is pretty much set in that regard, where they're pretty comfortable with all the guys they have there. And they have, obviously, like I said, they have a lot of depth there. It's going to be that pitching. And you and I talked about it last year a lot in our little radio show we do online, that Carmona was the key last year, and I still think he's the key. Well, him and Westbrook are the key this year, same as last year. If those guys are healthy and performing well, I think this team could be a sleeper. Because young talent sometimes has a way of overachieving,
of not knowing that they're young.
Exactly. We saw in '04, the Indians, they were 1 game out in the middle of August, 8 games over 500. Sometimes it comes quicker, maybe sooner than you wanted to, because they weren't really ready for it yet, and they kind of got ahead of themselves. They went and they kind of fell off after that. But sometimes things can work out in that regard, and really it all comes down to that pitching.
Right, and we talked a little bit about the starting rotation, but I think additionally what we're seeing in the bullpen is a huge change in strategy, where in the past the Indians, call it the curse of Bobby Howry. The Indians had Bob Howry come in 2005 off the scrap heap, and they turned him into this phenomenal back-end reliever. And so all of a sudden the Indians thought that, hey, we can do this every year. We just get Danny Graves or Roberto Hernandez, or we'll get someone and we'll rehabilitate him, Scott Sauerbeck, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. No harm done. And in the past couple of years, you see the Indians definitely changing gears to where they're adding these power arms, where they traded DeRosa for Chris Perez and Jess Todd, 2 guys who are probably going to be in the bullpen for most of this season and are power arms. By the same token, you finally have some of these young guys like Tony Sipp come up and can really contribute. It seems like the Indians, after years and years of having these volatile bullpens, could possibly, knocking on wood, because you can never really count on a bullpen, could actually have the makings of a decent bullpen. And that's even if Kerry Wood, perhaps leaves mid-season, at the end of the season, whatever it may be. They seem to have kind of the makings in place, and then they, go out and draft like an Alex White. They have power arms back there, guys that can get strikeouts, guys that, it's not this Joe Borowski, let's, all chew our nails and hope that Joe Borowski can get out of this thing. We have guys that are lockdown pitchers like a Chris Perez, who, he may walk a lot of guys, but at the same time, he's going to strike out a lot of guys, and that's a stark comparison to what they've had in the past. And as you know, Tony, it goes up and down the line now with them, where they're transitioning some of these starting pitchers who are, if you want to call them fringy starting pitching prospects or depth starters, they're transitioning them now to bullpen guys, where they're saying concentrate on 2 pitches. Let's do what the Twins have been very successful at, where the Twins always plug in these guys that, you don't know who Matt Guerrier is, you don't know who Pat Neshek is, but these guys come out of nowhere and they really contribute to the major league level.
That's something we've seen a lot of big change over in the last 2 years, because this year they've only signed, I think, 2 free agent pitchers, Saul Rivera and Jason Grilli. Yeah. So obviously there's been a commitment made to where they're going to go with their young guys in the bullpen. As you mentioned, you got Jess Todd. He might be one of those guys that's the odd man out and goes to Columbus. He probably needs more time, because you're going to have to go sort through 2 guys they picked up in the offseason. Roll 5 draft. You got Hector Ambrose, and then
Mitch Talbot.
Yeah, Talbot from the shopping trade. So there's 2 guys there that they may want to try to fit in that last spot in the bullpen. 2 other guys that Talbot's a fringe power arm. He gets up 94. And Ambrose gets up there to 94 too as well. But that's the difference. The last 2 drafts and all the trades that they made last year, that was kind of like the common theme was guys that can throw power. And I think we're going to start seeing some of those arms. Like I said, and just because there's guys in bullpen roles now, like I said, there's starters that are going to be converted. You got Hagedorn that they got from the Red Sox trade. He may eventually be moved to the bullpen. You got, like I said, Rondon. So there's a lot of options, flexibility, versatility with all that, how they can work it. And the one guy I really want to see, and he was good last year. He was almost a little inconsistent in the first half, but Tony Sipp.
Okay.
You know, the walks were kind of high, but you know, some of that, you know, they always say command's the last thing to come after you've had Tommy John surgery. So it was his first full season coming off of Tommy John, first full season playing without rehabbing. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes back from that this year, and if the command is there, they really think he could be something special at that bullpen, because he throws up to 95. He's consistently 91, 94, but he creates a lot of deception with his delivery. But the good thing about him is he has that wicked wipeout slider, and if he's commanding the zone with his fastball, he's gonna be unhittable.
And I think that it's interesting, you know, you were saying that this change in strategy of adding these guys. The other thing that was interesting is they were making all these trades for Martinez and Lee and even Garco and Betancourt. What they seem to be doing is they were adding all these guys at different levels, where they have, you know, a group at AAA, and then they have a group at AA, and they have a group at Single A, and you know, it's the lesson of Adam Miller and Chuck Lofgren and all those pitchers that, you know, look to be, okay, well, Adam Miller will just eventually join the rotation, and then Chuck Lofgren will come up and join the rotation. There's a lot of things that can go wrong between Kinston and Cleveland, and I think that what the Indians have done is they've tried to, as much as you can, take that attrition rate out of it, and they've tried to say, look, we're just going to throw a bunch of things out there. We're not going to throw all our eggs in one basket. And, you know, if you've got Brian Price and Connor Graham and, you know, Alex White and all these guys all together, no, not all of them are going to pan out. But if one or two of them do, and we can get a starter and reliever out of it, then it goes back to what they thought they were putting together back when, you know, they knew that CeCe wasn't going to stay, so they thought Adam Miller was going to come up and replace him, or they thought that Carmona was going to come up and replace him. There's just too many variables that can go wrong, particularly with pitchers, that it seems like this new strategy is, look, we're going to just load up on power arms. If something goes wrong because we've got somebody else right beneath it that might be able to contribute. Well,
and that's the key with that. I mean, I love prospects as much as anybody, but they all don't hit. I mean,
right.
If you're lucky to hit, if you know, 30% of them, if you're lucky, to different degrees. You know, who's going to be an all-star? All-stars are hard to find. And then obviously, as you go down the level, you know, to like a complimentary player or a bench player or whatever, you fill-in guy, you know, you hit more on those. But you don't really hit on them. So yeah, you definitely, what they did this past summer, they went out and got, I think, 9 total guys in all those trades with Connor Graham and Just Todd and Perez and Hagedorn and Knapp and all those guys, Carrasco, that they kind of threw these guys all up there. They're all high-level guys, potential high-level guys, and if 2 or 3 pan out, then that's great. If more, then that's beautiful. I mean, that's kind of the mindset they took with that, and they also kind of did that with the draft last year, where, you know, it wasn't a very high upside draft compared to 2008, which is looking like a really good draft right now.
Right.
But they kind of picked a bunch of guys, you know, a lot of power arms, and they're going to see how it shakes out.
Right. Well, despite it being you know, end of January here, we're talking summer baseball here with Tony Lastoria from theclevelandfan.com. I'm Paul Cousino from theclevelandfan.com. We've got lots more to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about prospect rankings here with Tony, who knows them better than anybody, and when you're talking about the Indians. But you are watching All Bets Are Off, and we'll be right back.